Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome to the drasha for Shabbat Vayikra. As many of you will know, Hadassah and I have now both recovered from our personal bouts of coronavirus. Thank God we've both recovered fully. Neither of us experienced any of the really acute symptoms, and both us and, thank God, the kids are well and fighting fit. I just wanted to take this opportunity to really thank everyone for their offers of help, of support, and the outpouring of love and kindness that we received from across the community. Our hearts and our tefillot are with anyone who's currently unwell, and of course, if anyone's would like to talk about it in any way or wants us to share our experiences, please do. Our virtual doors are always open, and we're really happy to speak and reach out to anyone who needs it at this time. So this week we begin Sefer Vayikra, and that's really where the Torah switches from narrative to commandment. It starts with the Mishkan, specifically the Korbanot, and goes on to talk about the Kohanim, the festivals, and the Kedusha, the land of Israel. And as we start this new Sefer, it's worth exploring what is the theme that really brings this book together. Rabbi Bachya, in his introduction to Sefer Vayikra, suggests that the theme is Kedusha, of connecting to God. And that makes sense, right? After what could be more exciting than learning how to build a relationship with God? We've just finished the greatest story on earth. A nation of slaves are brought out to freedom. They experience divine revelation. They mess up. It gets rebuilt. They build a home for God's presence to dwell amongst them. And the book ends with God's presence filling the Mishkan. And if that's so, now that we're going to learn how to sustain that divine connection, to live a life of Kedusha, it's hard not to experience it as a bit of an anticlimax. The first thing we dive into is a detailed analysis of various korbanot. Now, the only way we can really appreciate that transition is if we understand that korbanot are not just a grim bloodbath. Within the perspective of the Rambam, who sees korbanot as the concession to our base selves, we have to understand korbanot as subjugation of the will to the divine. That's obviously a very powerful and powerful mandate, an important point. Hard for us to derive meaning from or connect to in contemporary area. Rav Amos Luban, one of my teachers in yeshiva, shared a beautiful idea several years ago that I've never forgotten, and he draws on the perspective of the Ramban of Nachmanides, who understands that the popular translation of the Korban as a sacrifice is really deeply misleading. A sacrifice implies giving up something for nothing in return. In truth, however, the shoresh, the root of the word korban, is kuf resh bet, karov, to come close. And now classically, the rabbis assume that an animal is called a korban because it's mitkarev, it's brought close to the mizbeach. But on a deeper level, the korban ultimately serves to bring the individual who brings it closer to God. The things we give up are merely the vehicle through which our closeness to God is achieved. And that teaches us something very powerful. Building a close relationship has moments of immense joy, moments of celebration, moments of ecstasy. But a truly loving and close relationship also requires us to be willing to contract ourselves for the sake of the other. To give up aspects of what we enjoy, to give up sometimes our possessions, be they physical or emotional. And in Kabbalistic thought, this is known as tzimtzum, creating a limitation for the sake of the other. And in fact, it's the answer to the age-old question as to how an infinite God can create space for the free will or the independent existence of a limited humanity. In Kabbalistic thought, we understand that God contracted himself, so to speak, and made space for us. And that was an expression of love, an expression of caring, that allows us the freedom to make our own mistakes and actualize our potential, and ultimately to learn and to come close to God through our own merits. And now to return to korbanot, within this perspective, they're truly the best introduction to a book that's there to teach us about building a relationship with God. They lay down the fundamental principle that in order to really build a deep and meaningful relationship, you need to be willing to give up something for the sake of coming close. To be mitzamtzem, to contract your desires, to give up your possessions even, in order litkarev, to come close. Now, over the last few weeks, there's a huge amount that we've been asked to sacrifice, been asked to give up, to limit our personal freedom in the most drastic of ways. And to be honest, as a pragmatic optimist myself, I could never have imagined the lengths that we've been expected to go to. or imagine that we'd have to close down or limit our interactions with other people in such a drastic way. But truly, it's not a sacrifice of personal relationships. It's a tzimtzum. We're limiting ourselves for the sake of coming closer, offering something up on the altar of our love for one another, of our care for the vulnerable, of our care for the precious resources of our medical system. It's a limitation that's giving us a much keener, a deeper, a greater appreciation for the many things that we might otherwise have taken for granted. And what we've seen across our community over the last 2 weeks is an incredible reflection of that. We've seen people stepping up in an extraordinary way to care for one another, to support one another, to build relationships, even whilst keeping physically distant. And as we enter into another Shabbat where we can't be together physically, on behalf of Hadassah, of the entire family, I'd like to wish everyone a beautiful Shabbat, a Shabbat where we can bring the Kedusha of that we're unable to connect together in the Bet Knesset and the Shul, but that Kedusha to bring together into our homes. We can bring that Kedusha into our relationships, to the patience that we need in this time, having the kids at home. For the last 2 weeks, we've had a week more than everyone else because we had to self-isolate. Has been an amazing lesson in patience and really bringing that holiness into our personal relationships, into our home, into Shabbat that we spent just us as a sort of nuclear family, perhaps one of the first times in a very long period. And please God, we should all get through this, not seeing it as a sacrifice that is causing us to give up something, to suffer, but rather as a sacrifice that's bringing us closer to one another, bringing us closer to an appreciation for our blessings in life. And I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. And please God, we should be able to be together physically and in the meantime virtually together very soon. Shabbat Shalom.